strength is your ability to manage pain, suffering, overcoming obstacles. Your thoughts become your words become your actions, right? And when your actions are accumulated over time, it becomes a habit.
Meet Phil Daru. He is a world-renowned strength and conditioning coach and former professional MMA fighter, widely recognized as one of the best combat sports performance coaches globally. He has trained hundreds of elite fighters, including UFC champions like Dustin Poirier, Colby Covington, and Kyoji Horiguchi.
You're changing the play doesn't mean you're out the game.
Yes.
You just need to change the play, have confidence, and believe in yourself, and to the extent that you can still work efficiently and effectively.
My muscles were breaking down to the point where my kidneys were at failure mode, right? I was urinating blood.
So it's a dangerous thing for a fighter to ignore his or her weaknesses.
I started to become a better coach when I stopped thinking of just myself and wanting to just win for the sake of winning, and really just started helping people.
What do you think of some of the lies that are being told in the fitness industry?
I would say it's more nutrition and diet than anything.
Phil, I appreciate you being here today.
Thank you for having me, brother.
Absolutely.
New York, man.
Yes, welcome.
Yep, Florida boy in New York.
Yes,
a little different.
And now I have to say, go Knicks.
Yeah, let's do it, man. I'm down. I like to see they haven't won in a while, right?
Yes, quite some time.
Awesome.
I think last time they were in the finals was, I want to say 99.
Wow.
Maybe.
Wow.
Right, 99. And yeah, I was going crazy watching the game last night.
Yeah.
Oh,
I bet.
I'm
was it crazy out here?
I wasn't down here in the city, but from what I saw on
Gotcha.
television, it was insane. It was insane. I was home with the wife and kids going crazy, you know?
I feel like New York, I mean, you're passionate about your sports, right? It's like New York, Boston, right? I think that, you know, my and you'll like this, my mother was born and raised in Queens, in Flushing. And so she told me all about it, you know? I've been here a few times. I've never been in this area, but every time I come out here, it's like live action, right? It's a lot of energy. So, and we get a lot of people coming down from New York to Florida. And I'll tell you this, the hardest workers, the ones that are focused, they usually come from New York. So I'll give you your props.
Okay, I'll take that.
Yeah,
I'll take
sure.
that. I'll take that. Phil, so you're obviously known as a high performance elite coach, if you will. But before we get into that, just in sort of studying your background and your journey, what I believe is your life essentially has broken down into three pillars: faith, family, and fitness.
Yes, sir.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, pretty spot on.
All right. Let me ask you this. Has there ever been a time in your life, either past, present, or future, when either one of those pillars you believe has been compromised by the person you were, or maybe even the person you needed to become?
That's a really good question. Compromise in a sense of how, though? Because typically you're going to go through difficult situations. It's going to test who you are. So I've developed an understanding of my purpose, which kind of gives me an overarching understanding of how I should live my life, which with these two things that I look at every day, which is order and strength. Now, strength overall, like if you think about it from a science perspective, it's creating force, right? Or producing force. But I also know that strength is your ability to manage pain, suffering, overcoming obstacles. With order, right, it's a proper alignment of your actions, responsibilities, and priorities. So if I look at my days, they're set up with proper order and being able to attack the day with proper virtue. So when I can understand that, it allows me to, one, stay consistent on the path, because there's a lot of things that happen on your daily, you know, your day-to-day that you might get swayed in a direction that you don't need to go in. And that's where you have to fall back to your order. But overall, growing up where I grew up, you can be swayed in some bad direction. And so you have to fall back to that. And I think you can't really connect the dots until you go forward, right? And so what I've been able to do is really integrate all these different things that I went through and been able to maneuver and put together a framework for not just how I coach, but how I live my life. So I look at it as a learning process. Obviously, every day you learn, you gain knowledge, then you acquire the knowledge, but you tie that into the natural God-given talent that you've been able to get by the grace of God. And then I acquire the skills that are around that talent to allow me to execute what I do as a profession or as a husband, as a father. If I can do that, then everything comes into play and it allows me to progress each and every day. Now, there's going to be some undulations, right? There's going to be some dips. You're not always going to feel great, and it's to be expected. But just staying focused on the true mission, which a lot of people, again, because we're distracted, there's so many distractions in the world, they lose focus and lose sight on the end vision. And so when I can put these things in front of me, my order and the strength that I can acquire through that and maintain my virtue, then the days become a little bit less fragmented and I'm able to simplify. It doesn't make it easier, but simplified enough to where I can execute accordingly.
And it makes sense. You mentioned order. I think that's a great word for it. When I wake up in the morning and I'm out of order, so to speak, I'm all off. I'm off for the rest of the day. If I don't get the workout in, if I don't get my meditation in, I feel off throughout the day. But to your point, and I know you mentioned how you had to go through some things in order to really master that framework, I think is the word you used, right? And so going through those experiences required you to pivot quite often based on what I read on you. Take us through those times in your life when you had to pivot.
I think the reason why in pivoting is not quitting. I think a lot of people get that misunderstood. It's identifying where the next leverage point is in your life. And so from playing football to now executing and going and being a professional fighter and then executing another avenue, which would be coaching, I tied all of those things and all those skills that I've acquired and all those experiences, and I found that it allowed me to be the person that I am today. So when you look at it, I'm very integrative in my thinking. And I think you have to be. You're an attorney, correct?
Right.
So you have to be able to integrate all these ideas and all these things and put them into a solid understanding and a framework to make sure that you're doing what you need to do to get the job accomplished. So first, it started off, I've always been active. I've always been an athlete, to say, for lack of a better term. I never knew anything less than being physically active. So that came kind of second nature to me. When people say, how did you know that you could do it? I never knew that I couldn't do it. It was just, again, something that it was instilled in me. I think my mother instilled it in me. She was always physically active with me. We always trained together, even when I was 4 years old. And so I think that allowed me to understand like a goal, right? Oh, there's a goal. I need to attack it, even at a young age. So I'd never had a misunderstanding of what my actions were going to be for the end result. And so that allows me to put together these frameworks a little bit more consistently when you gain the experiences. But after playing ball, I knew that, one, I'm 5'8", I was pretty fast. I was getting injured a lot. But there was other things that I knew that I could do that was going to take it to the next level. And so when that stopped, when I found like there was no more to go, I needed to make a decision, and I made that decision decisively. I made it fast, but I also had a plan. So a lot of people, they go through it and they may what you say, build the plane while it's flying, right? And I think there's some merit to that. I do think you just need to act, but you should still have some type of plan of action. And so when I transitioned into fighting, I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? I need to make sure that, one, I'm consistent with my actions. I have a proper schedule. I'm getting with the right team. I'm getting coaching that I need. And then from there, it's about action. It's about consistent action. But with fighting and in anything, you're never going to be on 100% all the time. What I would say now, being a coach, what I tell my younger fighters is to stop thinking that you could do everything all the time, because there's always going to be a time where you're not 100%. And so how are you going to still progress even when you're at 50, 60% of your max? Well, there's ways to do it to still maintain progression without digging yourself deep into a hole. So I found out ways from let's just say an indicator standpoint, understanding, and this goes into more of the science behind it, but understanding subjective and objective indicators of fatigue, of stress inoculation. And you get accumulation of stress. Stress is systemic, right? From mental stress, psychological stress, physical stress. And then all these things come into play inside of, let's just say, a training camp. So what I need to do is I need to make sure that we are trying to understand how deep are we digging ourselves into this hole. And then from there, we can auto-regulate, meaning we can adjust, we can call an audible if necessary, still do something to check the boxes off so we can get closer to that vision, but not put ourselves at a disadvantage so that we cannot progress or possibly put ourselves in a position where we end up getting injured. So I say that to the young fighters, but I still have to do that every day because we're very ambitious people. By nature, we have something that we want to attain. Maybe for some people in my entrepreneurs and the executives that I work with now, it's like building their business, building their team, right? But they have to be very self-aware first and foremost, right? You have to have some introspection to understand how much bandwidth you have. And again, very ambitious, A-type dominant people tend to overdo it. Now, I'm not saying don't be ambitious. I'm not saying don't work hard. You should, right, but you should work efficiently too as well. And if that takes you to take some time off, give yourself a break, sharpen the sword to allow yourself to go ahead and get into the fight later on, then that's what you need to do. The problem is that it's very hard to pull people back.
Absolutely. You know, you used a great analogy, a football analogy. You said you got to know when to call audible, right? Yeah. And for those that don't play football, haven't played football, essentially, you know, quarterback, I played quarterback actually in high school. Nice. You know, quarterback gets up to the line and you need to change the play sometimes. And I believe your point is just because you're changing the play doesn't mean you're out the game.
Yes.
You just need to change the play, have confidence and believe in yourself, and to the extent that you can still work efficiently and effectively, right? Yep. And I believe that's critical. I think a lot of people take themselves out of the game because they don't know how to pivot. They don't know how to call audible. They think everything falls apart. Life is not like that. Things don't work out perfectly every time. Sometimes you have to know how to gracefully bow out of one situation and maybe set yourself up in a different way. And maybe you're still going to reach that goal. You just got to find a different way to get there. But just to circle back, I know you started out maybe at the age of 4, correct me if I'm wrong, you were in karate, right? Yeah. And fast forward a little bit, you ended up going to college on a Division I scholarship, which, by the way, is a great accomplishment. Only about 2% of high school athletes actually earn a Division I scholarship. So well done.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And then after that, you ended up going into fighting, right?
Yeah.
But at some point, there was a very serious diagnosis you received from a doctor that completely changed the trajectory of your life, at least to the extent that you were fighting. Share that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an accumulation of concussions that have acquired over the span of me playing football at like 7, 8 years old all the way to college. That was one thing. And then going into a combat sport where you're arguably getting hit in the head a lot, right? Even if you have good defense, you're sparring a lot of times. So that does play a role. And there was 2 things that were really causing this situation to give me the understanding to actually pivot to the next, position of where I need to be. I started coaching a lot. I started training because I needed to make money. I was a broke college kid at the time. I was actually getting my degree. I finished my degree. And after that, I was like, okay, I need to do something. I need to make some money. So I started training people just here and there, sneaking them in the Gold's Gym and, finding ways to just make some money on the side. At that point, I had a gym that I was training at for my own strength and conditioning. It was a legitimate strength and conditioning gym. So I was working with and working around high school athletes, college athletes, things like that. So the strength coach at the time knew that I had a degree. He knew that I was training people. He asked me if I wanted to start there and start working with those individuals. And I said, yeah, of course, because I love doing it. And so what ended up happening was that I started to gain more notoriety in the coaching world, in the training world. And so I get more clients, building up my clientele base. So at that point, I'm like, okay, well, I'm paying all this rent as an independent contractor. I might as well just open up my own space. And it wasn't like an actual grand vision that I had, but once I start seeing the progress that I was making with these individuals and starting to see how I created a community where everybody wanted to be a part of, I started to see the transition in myself for going from being a fighter only to coaching, business owner, and fighting professionally. So I was torn in so many different directions. So I had no focus. And so I lost fights that I shouldn't have lost. I wasn't training enough, and I was only focused really fully on the business. At a particular time, I grew the business pretty well. So it went from, let's say, for instance, for context, I started off at an 800 square foot facility. Had like 12 members. One was actually now my wife. So she walked into the gym, and so I had 12 members, and it grew from 12 to 60 to 350. I went from 800 square feet to 1,900 to 11,000 square feet. Yeah. So vastly grew over time within about a year and a half to 2 years. But I would say it skyrocketed within 6 months. So I didn't know what was I going to do, you know? And at that point, when I had those 350 members, I had 11,000 square feet. I was able to now delegate some of my time. So I concentrated on my fighting, concentrated on the camp, won my last fight, and I was going to go into another fight, and I was 2 weeks out. And for guys that don't know, like when you spar, you either go hard sparring, like where it's more game plan orientated, the intensity is high, or you have technical sparring, where it's very, very light, right? 50%. So we're just going through the motions. And so my training partner, which has been my training partner for years, he ended up hitting me in the back of the head and kicking me in the back of the head. So it was a hard shot. But again, we weren't typically going at that level. It just happened to hit me right on the right spot. And since I was 2 weeks out from my fight, I'm like, listen, I'm concussed. I got to go check this out. So I went to the neurologist, and he ran some tests, and he said, listen, you know, we're seeing some beta amyloid plaques that are starting to accumulate inside or in between your neurons, which again, that will stop growth from happening, right? So when you have that, typically that's the onset of something bad, whether it be Alzheimer's or something to that nature. He said, if you don't stop by the time you're 50, you're looking at that. So at that point, I'm like, oh man, what should I do? So I called my coach, and I asked him. You were
about 26 at that.
I was 25.
25.
And I called my coach, and my son was about to be born too as well. And I was still trying to go back to get my PhD. So I was trying to do a bunch of different things. And he's like, man, listen, your brand is growing. Your business is growing. You're a good coach. He's like, if it was your knee or your back, we could work around it, but it's your brain. You don't really want to work around that. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm like contemplating on what should I do at this point. And then I started to reflect on the success I was having with my business. And so I started to look at the pros and cons of what could happen. I could keep continuing on with a professional career, really focusing on this. Maybe the business suffers a little bit, but maybe I become a world champion. Maybe I make it to the UFC, whatever. Or I push this aside and I become the best coach that I can be. And I build my business and I help people. And I think people's understanding of that now, they can conceptualize it because look what happened. I made the right decision. But I had to really focus on what my true purpose was. One is to know and love God, to make sure that I stayed prayed up, to understand what was the path that he wanted me to take, and then to help others. So that's really what the purpose is all about. That's what we're here to do. And so however that is, but I knew that lane that I was traveling on was through the coaching lane.
And what's interesting is that you had mentioned you were also getting ready to become a father.
Yeah.
So presumably that was going to be the greatest role of your life up until that point, right? Mm-hmm. So what's interesting is that you were living this parallel existence and mm-hmm. dynamics, if you will, right? On the one hand, you had one identity that unfortunately, due to that blow to the head, mm-hmm. caused you to have to make a choice. Yeah. So you had to let that identity go, right? Mm-hmm. Let that part of you die. But there was a new birth that was on the horizon, and that was the birth of your son. Mm-hmm. So I can only imagine that at that point in time, he was a heck of a motivating factor in terms of why you would have decided that, right? Because if you go back, say you weren't married, say you weren't about to become a father.
Exactly.
That decision may have been different, or would have at least, it would have taken you longer maybe to make that decision. What do you think?
It's funny you said that, because I had this conversation with my wife this morning about this. And we have a good family friend that's in his 30s. He's a millionaire, but he doesn't have kids. So he's kind of doing a lot of different things. He's dwindling, right? And he's excited. He has the money to do things, so he does it. But we were talking about it. I was like, well, he doesn't have anything else to live for but himself at this point. And so it does transition when you start to have somebody that really, you have a life that you bring into this world and you have to take care of that. You become very selfless.
Absolutely.
And as a fighter, you need to be very selfish.
Right.
So I definitely think that it made the decision a lot easier. Not saying that it was an easy decision at all, but it made it a little bit more digestible.
Yeah.
Right?
Speaking of your son, do you mind if I share his name?
Sure. Yeah.
So you named your son Leonidas,
Yeah.
which, as we know, was the great Spartan king.
Mm-hmm.
For those familiar with the movie 300,
Yep.
that was the guy. But when I learned the name you had chosen for your son, to me, that wasn't just a baby name.
Mm-hmm.
That name was a declaration.
Yep.
What were you declaring when you named your son Leonidas?
I wanted him to realize when he gets older, and now he's old enough, to understand that the way he was brought into this world was for a reason. We all have a reason. And I wanted him to really understand how powerful that name can be. Because you think about it, Leonidas, lion, right? What is a lion? It's a king, right? He's ferocious. He's courageous. And I wanted that to be instilled in him from birth. But I also wanted to make sure that he understood that you can do anything you can or do anything that you want as long as you put the effort in and go courageously into battle, just like how Leonidas did in the Thermopylae, in the 300. That's what really drew me to the movie. It wasn't really the fact that, guys were jacked and they were badasses and all that, but really overcoming an arduous task, which we all have to go through. And that name solidifies that, in my opinion, right? And that's really why I wanted him to be named that, because I didn't want it to fall back on just being you have your standard names, it's all good, but I wanted it to be different. I wanted it to stand out.
Absolutely. I can relate. So my son's name is Julian. He's 24 now. But when he was born, I immediately started, especially as he got older, I called him Champ.
Mm-hmm.
I always called him Champ.
Yeah.
And sort of along the lines of how you felt, you always want your children to believe they are great, they can be great, to just think of themselves in terms of, tapping into the highest version of self, right? Mm-hmm. And we want our children to be better than we are, to make better decisions, right? Mm-hmm. To take a different path. Ultimately, we want them to be happy, right? And we're imperfect human beings, mm-hmm. but when I heard Leonidas, I said, that's cool. That's cool. And it made me think of how I call my son Champ.
Well, it took my wife a little bit.
Yeah.
She's like, no. I was like, and then it took her mother to say, yes, let him name it Leonidas.
I bet. So let me ask you this. So obviously you have been a person for pretty much your entire life who has a tremendous amount of discipline, right? In your experience, whether the experience you've gained when you were fighting personally or now as a trainer, do you believe the discipline is something people are inherently born with, or is it something that can be built?
No, it definitely can be built. And I think it's built through habits and routine. Okay. I mean, discipline is great, and I think that that's something that allows us to stay focused on a task and stay consistent without any distractions. I mean, the most notable people in the world, they will have distractions. Everybody does. It's just they stay focused on that main goal. They stay focused on their true path. And that's where you can see success come to fruition. But I think first and foremost, you need to develop habits. You need to develop a thought process. Your thoughts become your words become your actions, right? And when your actions are accumulated over time, it becomes a habit. And then with those habits, it's your new behavior, and it's something that you just don't miss out on. Like you don't not brush your teeth, that's a habit, right? So why are you brushing your teeth? Well, your breath don't want to be stank. Right. I don't want to not train because I know that it makes me feel better. I know that it makes me function better. I know that it's a part of my lifestyle. And so whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It could be a nutrition or a diet that you're doing, or maybe it's like I said, a new routine that you want to stay involved in. Maybe it's for some of my guys, I got jiu-jitsu guys now that stay consistently training because maybe they have a goal that they want to become a black belt. But you can't get there until you're training consistently. So you're making that a habit, right? And so you're disciplined enough to actually go through the rigors of the training and getting there at the same time every day or every other day to make sure that you're getting to that next step.
I completely agree with you. I mean, I'm by no means am I a trainer, way more than me in that area.
Mm-hmm.
But what I have recognized is that there is a distinction between setting goals and then carrying out habits. I think where a lot of people fail is, say someone who hasn't worked out in a significant period of time, they'll start out saying, I'm going to hit the gym every day for 2 hours. That's not realistic.
Not realistic. Yeah.
You're setting yourself up for failure. You need to just engage in some realistic habits. So maybe you say, you know what, I'm going to go to the gym every other day for 30 minutes. Just start it out, right? Whatever's conducive to your schedule.
Yep.
And so to your point, I 100% agree. It's all about the habits, because the habits lead to a lifestyle.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And now you have a lifestyle that becomes a part of you. It becomes your identity. But if you continue to set yourself up for failure, you're one step forward, 2 steps back. You've probably seen that sometimes.
Yeah. And the thing is, with even with the fighters too as well, it's like you don't make it to the UFC by just being average. And I'm not just saying average in a skill set perspective. I'm talking about average in your mindset, right? The most influential, the most successful, the most high-level elite guys that I've been able, and girls that I've been able to work with, they don't let any distractions or noise detract them from the end goal or whatever they see is the vision, right? But it also comes back to like understanding why you're doing what you're doing. So even when I start with a client or an athlete, I'm getting an understanding of who they are, right? And really, why are they doing what they're doing? Because there is going to be some difficult times and situations that you have to go through, and you have to fall back to the why. Maybe there's several whys. In the beginning, it may just be, you're a young kid, maybe it's like, I want to win world titles. I want to, make millions of dollars. I want to be famous, whatever it is. When you get older, right, and you develop a family, and maybe you made it to the elite level, maybe you're at the UFC or the NFL or the NBA, what happens now? Does it stop? No. You just have something else to go for. And sometimes that why transitions into, I need to take care of my family. I need to set my family up. I need to create a legacy for myself. I need to have wealth building over time so that my family can be taken care of even when I'm gone. And so that allows me to coach them differently to a degree. It gives me the understanding of how to communicate properly. And that's also tied into their personality too. So if somebody is like very, let's just say, dopamine, A-type dominant, but is open to new ideas, I will throw a lot of variation at them. I will throw new, interesting, and somewhat uncomfortable situations at them so that they can overcome it, so that we can push that adaptation to where we need to without overdoing it. Then you have other guys that are very conscientious, right? That are very analytical, right? Maybe they're thinking more on the terms of, I need to have structure. And that's fine. You should have that. I think there should be a mix between the two. I think that's where you become unstoppable. But with those individuals, it's like, okay, they need to have a set understanding of what they're doing and why they're doing it, because we don't want to waste any time. And time for them is money and it's energy. So I have to reframe certain aspects of the training so that it can be conceptualized as, this is going to have dynamic correspondence to whatever I'm doing inside the cage, ring, field, whatever it is, or in the boardroom. Because a lot of times, you're doing things just to do them. And that's the problem, is like, we don't necessarily want to just go in there and do whatever. We need to have some type of plan. So in order for them to understand that this is directly going to transfer over, they buy into the situation, which allows us to get better adaptations and allows us to progress faster and further. So with people, I think first thing you need to do is find out what you want, which is hard to do sometimes because people want everything. And that's the problem too. And you'll have ideas that come in your head. And I don't know about you, but like, and you probably have this same situation. It's like, I have so many ideas that I want to embark on, so many goals, right?
Absolutely.
I have to extract all of those from inside of my brain onto paper. So when I have it in front of me, now it's easier. It's more digestible. I can understand it. I can conceptualize it. And then I will take a chunk of those ideas and I will make them the priorities for the day. And I'll do that every day. So I take those 3 or 4 priorities and then I organize a plan of action, a framework per se, to accomplish those priorities. That is the end goal for the day. And I can lay my head down at night knowing that I accomplished those priorities, which is getting me closer to the end goal. And typically, you know, it's very hard when a lot of people have so many things that they want to accomplish. But I'll say this, with the extraction of getting all these things on paper, it makes it more, or it makes it less stressful. And a lot of times when you're very ambitious and you're laying your head down at night and you go, I got all these things I got to do tomorrow. What should I do? Take a second, organize your day for the next day. And so there's a book out there called Organizing Tomorrow Today. I don't know if you read that.
No.
And well, it was given to me by a strength coach. It's very well known. And he said, man, read this book because it's helped me a lot to really organize my days. And so all it is just basically taking the highest and the most difficult things that you need to do and set that as an important thing to do the first part of your day. Typically between the hours of, let's just say 8 to 12, right? Because you're the most cognitively aware, you're the most energized, your testosterone is at its peak. That's when you want to go after the arduous tasks, right? And those are sometimes the things that you don't want to do because they're the most difficult. But then once you get them done, now it gives you freedom. Again, we'll go back to discipline. It gives you freedom to do other things that you need to do or want to do. And now you have no worries for the next day because then you got to do it again. So you set some time the day before to go over the organization for the next day.
And that makes perfect sense. Journaling helps out. I talk a lot about that. But I have a binder, and it's ultimately my execution binder.
Yeah,
and
cool.
It's pretty much what you just stated. I list what are the high priority things I need to get done. Was anything I didn't get done yesterday that carried over? And then I set myself up for the day. And then I also mention things that I did accomplish just because being able to see visually things that I accomplish, it makes you feel good.
Sure.
It makes you feel it. And there's that's progress there.
Do you write down what you're grateful for every night?
Yeah. And I need to do that more.
Yeah.
Admittedly, I don't write it down enough. I certainly spiritually and mentally to myself, I'm constantly doing it throughout the day, but I don't write it down enough. And I need to move more into that space in terms of the physicality behind that, because I do recognize seeing it on paper is just, it's another mechanism by which we can reinforce what it is we're grateful for, you know?
Well, when you physically write it out, it makes it somewhat tangible.
Yeah.
Right? So like as the execution of actually writing down word for word, not typing it, right? Not putting it in your phone, but actually taking a pen or a pencil and writing that thing down. And that's where you can go, oh, this is really something that I should be, whether it's priorities or being grateful. It allows you to, okay, understand your wins and know that there's more wins to be made, but give yourself some grace, right? Because you've accomplished a lot. And same with you, like you can't go through law school and do all this stuff. And like, you got to give yourself some grace, because otherwise you're going to constantly be in a state of reaction, and like you're fighting against your own demons.
Right.
And that's what it all is, all it comes down to. God wants you to understand the grace that he's given you. And so you have to recollect and you have to understand that each and every day.
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up in terms of the grace aspect of what God wants from us. I'm finding that over the years recently, my relationship with God has become stronger and stronger.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you want to call it wisdom, experience. The key thing is that it's becoming stronger and stronger. And so because of that, I catch myself now when, to your point about how sometimes you just, maybe you're not being grateful enough,
Yeah.
right? Or you're not recognizing that, or you're just being too hard on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I catch myself and I say, Jay, relax.
Mm-hmm.
You've got this. Because we put a tremendous amount of pressure on ourselves.
And why do we do that?
Right.
Why do we do that? Think about that.
Why do we do? Well, I mean, just from what I'm learning through this conversation, I can tell we're both men of honor.
Mm-hmm.
We're two men who insist on having progress in our lives at all times.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to tap into the highest version of ourselves, whether it's physically, emotionally, spiritually. And when we don't do that, when we're not doing that,
Mm-hmm.
we become impatient with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we constantly feel like we're gaining, like this progress. As a matter of fact, I think one of your quotes is, if there's no progress, you're dying, right?
Yeah.
So that it's true. That's how I feel. And I think because of that, we get frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
And even when we are accomplishing so many things, sometimes I don't want to say we aren't grateful. It's just that sometimes we need to take a step back, smell the roses, right? As they say, and believe that we are contributing in a positive way to society, to community. You're doing wonderful things by training people. You're now integrating your faith.
Yeah.
So it's faith-based training.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That right there is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, no, for sure. You hit it right on the head. I think that, with that being said, as ambitious, as driven people, like, there's a level of anxiety that comes up, right?
Yes.
Because then it goes, all right, now what is the anxiety? Well, it's the fear of the unknown, really, if you think about it, for lack of a better definition, right? And I would say that once you can acquire new skills and once you can identify the problem and find the solutions to the problem, you become more confident. And so that brings down the anxiety. But we also like to compare. And that's the biggest issue that we see.
Yeah.
Young men, too, they compare themselves to people that they see online, Instagram, YouTube, whatever it is. But they have to take a look at where they've been, where they're at, and where they're going. And when you can identify limiters and gaps in the system, it reduces that anxiety because you're attacking the limiter.
Right.
Same thing applies to training. So again, I draw the analysis of, or I draw the connection between these frameworks of training, but also in life. Because let's say, for instance, if a fighter comes to me and he's like, I want to get stronger, but I know that they're strong for their weight class, or I know that that's not the limiter. And then I look at all the things from an assessment process, and then I indicate the problem, and then we present the problem to them in black and white or in number form. Then they go, oh, it wasn't the strength issue. It was the conditioning issue. And so now we put together a program. We put together a call to action. We put together some type of system to get that nullified. And so what ends up happening is they go, this whole time that I had this limiter, now it's not a limiter anymore. So I close the gaps and now become more confident going into a situation, knowing that I prepared accordingly. And that allows you to be, again, successful in anything that you do, but also it sets the base for your progression, right? It sets the base for your progress. And there's always going to be limiters. There's always something that I should learn. There's always something that you could learn, that I can learn.
Absolutely. In fact, I yearn for that.
Yeah, you should. Yeah. And that shows that, one, you are understanding of the limitations that you have and the ability that you can have when you get those goals, when you set those parameters, when you find those limitations. But the problem is that a lot of people want to just focus on what they're good at. Mm-hmm. Same thing goes with fighters and athletes. It's like they don't want to train certain things because they suck at it. But that's not how you should attack anything. Now, don't get me wrong. In business, it's a little different. But I think that overall, if you have an understanding, let's say, for instance, you're starting a business and you know a lot about marketing and branding. It's your thing. But you know nothing about finance, right? Now your money's all over the place. And then you try to bring somebody in that may be okay, but you don't know if they're good or not because you never put yourself in it. So get good at everything, but be exceptional at one thing. So when I look at it, it's like not just being a generalist or a specialist, you should be a specialized generalist, meaning that you should have the ability to be world-class at one thing, but be somewhat 80% at everything else so that there is no gaps in the system. And so that allows you to be a better individual, whatever it is, better professional.
You highlighted something I believe is very important, and that is the ability to recognize your weakness.
Mm-hmm.
The distinction between corporate America, or I'll just use my experience as an attorney as an example, versus your experience with respect to training UFC fighters and being in the cage, right? When you're in the cage, presumably the margin of error is very, 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 very slim, and it goes by like this. So it's a dangerous thing for a fighter to ignore his or her weaknesses. Why? Because I would imagine, and I'm not a fighter, but I would imagine if I'm in combat with someone, the minute I spot your weaknesses, I'm going to try to take advantage of your weaknesses, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you may be strong in this particular area, but you didn't work on your weaknesses. Mm-hmm. And so you've exposed that, and I'm going to attack that now, right?
Exactly.
With corporate America or other areas, people can delegate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you're weak at this, I'm just going to pass it on.
Sure.
But you can't do that as a fighter.
I don't think you can do that in business either, though. I don't, and this is why I say that, because even when you delegate, like you should still have an understanding of who you're delegating
100%. 100%. Yeah. With
fighting, you're in there by yourself.
Right.
At the end of the day. Right. You should know what type of camp that you need to be involved in, what type of coach that you need to have, coaches that you need to have, what type of training partners you need to have. So that's in some way understanding of everything. But yes, intrinsically focusing on what is that limiter for yourself.
Sure.
And then humbling yourself to know that you need to work on those things.
Right.
It's humility.
Yeah, right. Have you found it somewhat frustrating with certain fighters who don't have that ability to humble themselves, right? How do you handle that dynamic?
You open up the veil and you let them see it for themselves. So you put them in a position to where they have to only do that. And it's a constraints-led approach. So we give them the constraint of, if you're a good striker, you're not striking at all. You're going to go against this wrestler or this grappler or something like that. And now you cannot use your strike. You can only use takedown defense, and you can only use your footwork and your angles to get out of the situation. And then when they get repeatedly taken down, and now they have no way of getting out of that position because I gave them that constraint, now they go, oh, wow, you're right. I see the problem. It's the same thing in business, right? So like, again, I don't want you focusing, marketing, you have that. Branding, you have that, right?
Right. By the way, Phil, people should know, you are an elite UFC trainer, just so people know and understand. You've coached and trained champions, right? I think you've had 5 different champions in 5 different weight classes, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. By the way, statistically, if I'm right about that, statistically, I don't know of another high performance coach that has done that. I could be wrong on that.
Skills coaches, yeah.
Skills, okay.
But no, not in the strength and conditioning world, I don't believe.
Right.
There's great coaches out there, don't get me wrong. And they're coming up more and more. I was put in the right position. God gave me the right lane to go through. And then I was just conscious of the lane to follow through. And then on top of that was being able to, I think the biggest thing with coaches in general and in leaders and anybody that's maybe even building a business or trying to lead a team is, one, having humility, and then not being rigid in your thought process, right? And that allows you to grow.
Yeah, well, here's why I believe, because I find that fascinating. I mean, your ability to be able to tap in, because you're not just engaging in the physicality aspect of it. There are spiritual aspects of it, emotional, mental. You're probably dealing with people who have a lot of personal issues going on in their lives. But that's a testament to who you are as a person, as a man, as a human being, as a contributor to society. Here's something that's interesting, and this is based on the International Journal of Sports Science and Coaching of 2020. Research on high performance coaches shows that ego displacement, which is essentially the ability to derive identity from others' success, is the single greatest predictor of sustained elite coaching longevity.
Love it.
And that, my brother, is why I'm confident you're going to be around for a long time.
Wow. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's awesome. So what was that study done?
International 2020.
2020. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you've been around for a minute.
Yeah. I would say this. Within the past, now almost going on 20 years of performance coaching, it's never really just physical. Right? It's psychological, it's mental, it's emotional, it's behavioral, it's environmental, and again, it's spiritual. Because you have to tap into a higher purpose. You have to tap into something that is outside of yourself. Otherwise, going through the rigors of training and even in a camp, it gets monotonous, right? It's damaging. It's damaging to your body. It's damaging to your ego, right? And again, I think that at that point, when your ego gets involved, that's a recipe for disaster right there. I think, with pride is the root of all evil. So if we can be conscious of what we can do and have humility in the sense of, I may not know everything. Same thing with coaching. The problem is that you get coaches that have some success and then they feel like they know it all, and then they stop progressing, they stop learning, they stop evolving. They start only thinking that this method is the only way. And that's not truth. Like, truth is rooted in an understanding that things can be adaptable based upon the situation, circumstances, and the environment.
We talked about how you're a very faith-based individual with respect to your training. Let me ask you this. How someone comes to you for the first time and you can tell maybe they're really not too tapped into their faith, right? How do you integrate and incorporate that type of mindset? And I don't mean on a spiritual level. I mean more on a mechanical level, because what you're doing is mechanical, right? How do you incorporate that into the training? How do you initiate that?
It's a good question. You got to find out what, again, they're very passionate about, right? And so passion will precede their spirituality, because we think about this, and I'm a Catholic male, right? The passion of Christ, he suffered for all of us. So when I can tap into my own passions and my own suffering, then intuitively or indirectly, I am getting closer to God. So I start with passion, and then I start with execution through suffering. And so they start to realize that through this suffering, they cannot rely on only themselves. So they become less selfish in that sense. They become less ego-driven, because they know that this isn't doable by themselves. And whether that's organizing a team, a coaching staff, family, they all have to be cohesive in the sense of understanding what the true end goal is, which is probably winning the fight or something like that. But at the end of the day, we all have to be on the same wavelength. So if we're not constantly communicating, if we're not on that same mindset or that same page per se, then it's going to be chaotic. And so I go back to order and strength, right? Priorities, right? Responsibilities and actions. Now, if you have order without strength, then it collapses, right? There's no stability there, because strength is your ability to manage and overcome suffering. But strength without order, it's chaos. It's chaotic in nature. So we have to be able to merge the two. And that falls back to fortitude, temperance, prudence, and justice, right? You have to have some level of fortitude. It just is what it is. It's a physical sport. It's a physical life in general. Like, there's going to be times where you're hurting. There's going to be times where you're not feeling 100%, where you still got to get the job done. So that requires fortitude. But you also should have some level of temperance, knowing when to push and when to pull back. With justice, you just got to stop being so egotistical in the sense of, you don't know it all, man. So find the right people or the right things to get you in the right position to succeed, because it isn't all about you at that time. And when you can tap into that, that's the natural order of life. I started to become a better coach when I stopped thinking of just myself and wanting to just win for the sake of winning, and really just started helping people. Because it allowed me to really find out, okay, how can I truly help and create value for that individual? And when you can create value for other people, again, we go back to purpose and love in general, right? St. Thomas Aquinas says that love is the will, the good of the other. And so what do I want for you or for him or for anybody that I have love for? I want them to be naturally good. I want them to be in a good space. But the ultimate good is God. So where do we tie in? So if I'm like, okay, I want you to be good because I love you, then naturally you have to be in connection or in dominion with the first cause. And that's the creator.
And I firmly believe that's the ultimate sign of a strong man, someone who is able to have that ability to recognize, right?
Mhm.
Especially as someone who is training. When you're training someone, they are putting their trust in you,
Mhm.
but they have to be coachable.
Yeah.
They have to be able to set that ego aside.
Mhm.
And I believe that will make them a better, stronger, smarter fighter, because you got to be able to apply, yes, what you've learned physically,
Mhm.
but also how you're operating, right, on a mental level. And if your mind is just clouded with what you believe things should be, how it should be done, said, how it should go, that's going to really, really hamper your ability to become a successful, not only a successful fighter, but a successful person
Yep.
in general.
Yep.
What I love about what you do is you've trained UFC fighters, you train NFL athletes,
Mhm.
but you also train the suburban parents,
Yeah.
right?
So I started.
That's where you started.
Yeah. Yeah.
What commonalities have you found amongst all levels of people you're training?
In all levels, we all have ambitions, right? We all have
Okay.
desires. We all have distractions, and we all have our hectic schedule, right? Which is where that stress inoculation comes into play. I think the biggest parallels that I have now with even with working with executives and busy entrepreneurs is that, you know, they get bogged down by decision fatigue, right? They have to make decisions on a daily basis. You know, mothers and fathers and, you know, people that have lives that they have to worry about, they're constantly in worry, right? Because what's the ultimate fear for at least a parent is for something to happen to your child, right? And so all these things are coming into play. So what allows them to equip themselves better? Maybe being able to protect the ones that they have to protect. Maybe being physically active allows them to protect them better. Maybe being physically there in a sense of cognitively tapped in. Because when you train, you activate what's called BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor. So it allows you to be more cognitively active, right? It frees up the brain, gets you clear of mind, and allows you to make better decisions. So when you get decision fatigue, it allows you to block out what is not important to what is important. So with training, it's the same with everything. Like it allows you to be physically moving in a manner to where it allows you to understand who you are. I had a fight one time. It was my second pro fight, and arguably one of the most difficult physical things I've ever had to do. It was a tough fight, right? I literally thought that I was going to die in there. But when I got out of that, when I made it out, I go, oh, I'm really capable of doing things that are very, very arduous. I just attempted and finished a 100-mile ruck, which is, I did 50 pounds on my back for 100 miles. I did 20 miles a day, ripped up my feet, you know, had blisters everywhere, you know, sleepless nights, things like that. You know, body was aching. And I attempted this after the first attempt I failed. So I did 51 miles. I put myself in the hospital. I ended up getting rhabdomyolysis. Basically, my muscles were breaking down to the point where my kidneys were at failure mode, right? I was urinating blood and my feet were torn apart. I was like walking on broken glass. 60 hours no sleep, 30 hours on my feet with a 70-pound ruck. when I sat there in the hospital bed, I go, did I fail? Okay, if I failed, let's learn from this. Let's evolve, let's grow, let's strategize, and let's get this accomplished, because it is attainable if you do it the right way. I just wasn't prepared. So then your preparation becomes the motive, right? And so now I prepared accordingly. I put a better team around me. I had a better system and a strategy, and then we ended up getting the goal accomplished. So you do that every day in the gym. Somebody has what we call a PR, right? Personal record. That means that you've lifted, maybe it's lifting some more weight than you did the week prior. Maybe it's running longer distances at a faster time, right? So now you become more physically equipped, which then taps into your psychological state. Because now you know that you can go through an arduous, suffering task and become better from it. And so when anything comes your way, let's just say, and you're going to go through it, and it's going to happen daily, maybe, and it could be very drastic. You got to know that you have what it takes, and you have what it is in the tank to get over those difficult situations, as long as you can understand it. And you have to micro damage each and every day. So basically creating that micro trauma, because that allows you to grow stronger. Whenever you break down the muscle, it has to grow stronger. So you break down the system to allow it to grow. It's like growing pains. It hurts for a little bit. You have to go through a little bit of suffering.
Absolutely.
But if you can keep moving forward and don't let it deter you from the end goal or anything that you want to get to, you're going to be better off from it. That's why I say, if you stop moving, you start dying. You stop preparing. If you stop progressing, it's ultimately, you're going to stay still for too long, and anything that stays still regresses.
Right.
So always think in that way.
Yeah, you absolutely have to be able to recognize that challenges can be viewed as setups as opposed to setbacks.
Oh, yeah.
And if you can embrace that mindset, you are going to set yourself up for more success and progress. Obviously someone who's heavily involved in the fitness industry, what's interesting is that the fitness industry is a $96 billion industry annually. Yet since 1980, the obesity rate has continued to go up.
Yep.
What do you think of some of the lies that are being told in the fitness industry?
I wouldn't say, it's more nutrition and diet than anything. I mean, fitness, as long as you are being physically active and you're pushing yourself to an uncomfortable situation enough to where you cause that adaptation, you're going to be in a good spot, especially if you're not trying to win world titles or something like that. If you just go to the gym, like you said, go for 30 minutes and then do that for 4 weeks, then go for 35 minutes and then progressively overload, right? That's how we gain more progress. With diet, I think that there's a lot of misconception, and there's always going to be conflicting studies and evidence out there, right? Before, way back then, there was, you can't eat the egg yolk. Now you can eat the egg yolk, or keto was the diet that you wanted to go towards. Then it was carnivore, then you have all these different diets and fads that come up, and people get confused. So they don't know what to do. So then they're like, this is too complicated. I'm just going to go to McDonald's. And that's what it is, because you need to have a simplified approach. If they're not totally in it, it's very hard for somebody to conceptualize, I need to do all of this just to be in shape. This is ridiculous. And because people have hectic schedules, they're, obviously stressed out beyond belief, it's very easy to go to a fast food restaurant. It's cheap, again, too, as well. And it makes it attainable, and that's why they do it. So why is it so cheap? Well, one, it's not real food, right? They're not getting high quality meats or anything of that nature. And you go overseas, you can eat McDonald's, and it's not really McDonald's over here. You can eat, and I'm not saying go to McDonald's, but I'm saying anything. The food there is just, the quality there is way better. It's because we want things done fast. We want speed. We want affordability. And unfortunately, in America, in the US, we don't really have that available, and a lot of people are hurting because of it.
Right. It's absolutely true. What I say in my home is, if you don't buy it, we can't eat it. So, am I saying throughout the entire year, is it, we have a perfect diet? Of course not. once in a blue moon, you know, there may be a time where I say, you know, I'm going to have, but not the fast food and the greasy stuff. No. And, you know, when people, so I'm that guy in my family who I will bust your chops if I see you eating a bunch of junk all the time. Right. And so that's just who I am. And people know I speak from the heart.
Yeah.
They know I really mean the best for them.
Yeah, you have love for them.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't have much patience. I got to be honest. I don't have much patience for people who, you know, victimize their existence. I just don't. It's like you're either going to do it or you're not. If you mess up, fine. Get back on. Get back on the horse. Get back up. Let's go. Let's get busy. Let's do something. Stay active. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I see people not recognize how important their health and nutrition is, you know, and again, I'm not a bodybuilder, I'm not a trainer, but I'm someone who tries to be as conscious as possible. Right? Yeah. You got to have some level of consciousness. Some level.
True. As a coach, as a trainer, you have to be empathetic too as well.
Yeah.
Which is tough, you know, because you also have to remember that this isn't their lifestyle yet.
Right.
Right. I've grown up in this. I don't know anything different. Yeah. But when I talk to people that have no idea, that grew up in different environments, that, you know, that food like that, greasy food, fast food, whatever it is, was just the way they ate. And they don't see any problem with it because that's how they grew up.
Right.
Now you have to change their mindset, which takes time. Yeah. It's like an addict.
Yeah.
You really can't say, just get off of the drugs.
Right.
Like, no, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, it was in my house too. Yeah. Growing up, there was junk food everywhere.
Yeah, but you had a different understanding though.
Yeah.
Like you were, at least at that point, you knew that you wanted something better.
100%. And that really started for me probably when I got to high school and I became an athlete. And I knew that in order for me to do well and be better, be stronger, faster, whatever, I had to eat right. Sure. I had to eat better. Yeah. And then that went on into college. And I said, okay, let me allow this to become a lifestyle. And then that's essentially what happened.
Well, you look at like my man here, right? So like he probably didn't grow up lifting weights, right? Or anything like that. What's your name, brother? Wolf? That's a dope name. See? Did you grow up in the fitness world at all? Do you know anything about it? Right? When you were eating, like when you grew up eating, what did you usually eat? Whatever came on the table? Right?
All the bad shit for sure.
Yeah. And so if I were to get with him, we would have to slowly trickle in new ideas. And then he would have to see the progress and see the energy that he gains from that. So with that, with those new pain points that they're going to have, once they see the result and they see the numbers go up or they see how they feel subjectively, then they're like, oh, I need to do this more. It's the same thing with sleep. People neglect sleep all the time until they get a really good night's sleep. And then they figure out all the details and they go, oh, but I got to do this every day.
Right.
I got to do this every night because I'm gonna be so much more better and perform better. And people want to perform better, whatever they're doing, you know? So just got to give them those tools.
Absolutely. Yeah. Phil, let me ask you this. Sitting there as the man and person you are today, I'm going to ask that you think back to the time specifically when you were that 25-year-old younger man. What would Phil today tell that person?
There's a few things I would tell him. But what I would say is, first and foremost, be patient. Because there's going to be a lot of opportunities. And some of those opportunities may not be for your best interest. And you got to stay focused on truly what is going to make you or get you to what you would call happiness. And that's being able to have meaning in your life, joy in what you do, and being satisfied at the end of the day. But I still struggle with that to this day, right? Because when you gain some success, new opportunities are going to come. And you have to be able to decipher what those good opportunities are or the bad opportunities. You can't always attack you can't even always attack the good opportunities because it may not be the time for it. And that's where patience has to come into play. But for me, now, being a 37-year-old man with kids and a wife and a family and a team in a business, my main thing is making sure that I'm doing everything possible that I can do so that I can do the work of God. And the way I do that is through the talent that he has given me. And it doesn't necessarily mean just coaching. It may be things like this, where we're having conversations and maybe it helps someone.
Right.
Or if I'm doing a seminar or whatever it is, maybe putting out content, writing books. But whatever I can do to help someone achieve something that they feel is going to make them feel happy, right? Or get them to that place, then that's my job. But at 25, you just want to make a name for yourself, right? You want to make a lot of money, maybe. You want to set yourself up for freedom, you know? And it doesn't come if you don't stay focused on a main thing and you don't stay tapped in to something bigger than yourself.
Doing God's work. Amen to that, brother.
Amen,
That's
brother.
one of the reasons I started this podcast, because I wanted to be a further service.
Yep.
Phil, for those who are interested in your journey, for those who are interested in maybe reaching out to you, training with you,
Sure.
tell us, how can they reach you?
The best way you can get me on Instagram, I usually answer all my DMs. It's Daru Strong. YouTube channels, Phil Daru Strong. You can search my name there. Website is phildaru.com. I still do training. We have some online training going on in collaboration with Merrick Health, so very excited about that. If you want to train with me one-on-one in person, very selective right now. Time is limited, but we can figure that out. And then also, I have a school community that is $1 entry fee. That's it. So you get in there. We have a full community. I have courses in there. I have training templates. So I like to build that community very, very efficiently. But also, I want to see so many people in there really getting after it. So that's it.
Beautiful.
Thank you,
Phil, I
brother.
appreciate you being here,
I
brother.
appreciate it, man. Thank you.
man. Appreciate that.
God bless, brother.
God bless, bro.